Well, welcome to the Inside the Investor's Mind workshop panel. It's more of a panel, but we'll try to include the audience as well if you have questions. I didn't prep them necessarily for that, but if you have them during the presentation, feel free to ask them if your guys are okay with that. This is Susana Amorim. She's the, let me get my intro out so I can actually do this right. Susana Amorim is an investment manager at Gilde Healthcare, a $2.6 billion fund focused on healthcare innovation with hands-on experience in cardiovascular medtech startup and in large corporations, along with a biodesign fellowship from Stanford. She brings expertise in medtech and has successfully led 3 investments since joining Gilde. And there was some conversation around how to pronounce Gilde. Am I saying?
Oh, yeah. That's always a topic, and I can't pronounce it. So,
Oh, no.
no, yeah, I think it's Gilde.
Okay.
Yeah, the right one.
So those of you who are pitching to her, you practice that, but maybe not with her. So Armen Vidian is the founder and managing partner of Recode Ventures, who backs scientists and engineers building AI platforms to tackle big health challenges. The 10 investments in his first fund include companies ranging from those applying AI to create genetic medicines to surgical AI. Prior to Recode, Armen spent 6 years as a partner at DCVC, where he led investments in some of the earliest successes in computational biology and AI. Welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
So he is one to talk to about AI. We've already had some conversation about that, so I'm excited to hear what he has to say. Sean Morris is a general partner at Cultivation Capital and a serial medtech CEO. He currently leads RDO Medical and Amplifi Vascular and builds next-generation solutions for vascular disease. Previously, he founded Vidian,
That's correct, yeah.
which was acquired by Boston Scientific. Also, I hear he has a pitch 5 minutes after this presentation. So if he runs away, you can feel free to chase him down, and you can talk to him later as well.
If you can keep up. I'm going to be like O.J. Simpson running it through the airport.
So it's good to have you all with us today. Let's just start with the title of this panel, Inside the Investor's Mind. And Sean, maybe we can start with you. Here at LSI, here we are, surrounded by all of the different founders and different investors. What's on your mind as we go throughout this week?
Well, as you alluded to, I'm here to pitch the company that I'm currently operating. But I think, as I said here, I'm in a unique position. Not a lot of investors have been operators before. And so I always say I have a lot of empathy to the CEO, the person who's trying to make it work, trying to fix the car while you're driving at the same time. That's how I describe it. So you're fundraising, you're trying to reach endpoints, especially earlier stage. So for me, I like to just immerse myself and hear lots of people and their ideas and see how well they can condense their talking points into a minute. You know, what are you doing? What are you seeking to do? How do you develop that elevator pitch? There was a session here yesterday afternoon where they did that really quickly in like 3 minutes. I thought was really interesting. But I'm biased. I'm cardiovascular focused, so I really like that because I feel like mechanical solutions to plumbing problems, whether they're venous, arterial, cardiac, neuro. There's really, really elegant solutions, and there's still a lot of innovation yet to come. So I know he likes AI. My eyes roll back in my head. It's hard for me to understand the value proposition of AI specifically, but I know it's a really, really big, emerging, fun opportunity to talk about lots of cool things.
Okay, Armen, let's talk. What's on your mind?
Well, I can't let that one slide by. So, what's on my mind, because, in the tone set yesterday in the first talk, I think that and I say this with love, having been in the medical device industry for many years before I started as a venture capitalist, the medical device industry is sorely broken. And
the unorthodox ventures guy.
The unorthodox ventures guy, yes. It's sorely broken because we are looking at an industry that requires so much capital in which to launch a product that it has become very difficult for further capital to come on in. And we have a couple of options. We can shake a stick at the regulatory authorities. We can shake a stick at payers and so forth, or we can reinvent our industry with technology. If I were to go visit the halls of Guidant, now Abbott, where I worked 20 years ago, it would look a lot similar in its function to how it does today. And the technology people I know find this very strange and odd. I think that the value proposition in AI may be unclear to some because it's a little bit misplaced in what to expect from it. AI has the potential to, by having tremendous sources of data, to iterate much more quickly our product development cycles, to make it much easier to implement in a hospital or whatever care setting, and to decentralize from the hospital altogether, which we love because it expands markets, and to offer more complete end-to-end healthcare solutions for physicians and patients beyond the extremely important clinical benefits intraoperatively. So that's why we like AI, and not for the sake of it unto itself.
So I can imagine there's probably some people in the audience who are like, well, my product is more along Sean's line, so I'll just tune out, is what you're saying. But I think that's might be a mistake in that it is almost like computers at some point where it's going to be a part of your company itself. So maybe we'll get back to that instead of the product, the company. But let's talk about what's on your mind, Susana.
Yeah, no, happy to share. And what's probably is on the audience's mind right now is, please don't make it another AI panel, which I'm not intending to do. But and believe me, I think AI is extremely powerful when paired with meaningful insights and integrated into the workflow. But just as per se AI, I think it sometimes brings more noise than adds value. It's stopping AI now and talking about what's on my mind. Right now at LSI, it's all about finding the next big healthcare innovation product. And the one that truly solves an unmet clinical needs, improves patient outcomes, really can transform care. Gilde is better care at lower costs. That's our mantra. And also what's on my mind, it's always the team behind the product, how they execute, and basically if the product has the capability to overcome the hurdles and the complexities of the healthcare system. So it's basically a mix of vision and execution. Can this product become a reality? So that's probably right now what's on my mind at LSI.
All right. Well, I talked to a lot of founders yesterday, and there's some rough questions that they wanted me to ask. So I'm going to go a little bit different direction. I'm going to look at this as a relationship, and maybe we can talk from that perspective. So one of the things a lot of founders are interested in is, how do I get that first date? How do I get the conversation or in front of an investor? And maybe we can talk about that. I'm married with kids now, and I've been far removed from the dating world. So I think more about maintaining the life cycle of my relationship at this point. And at some point, we'll have to talk about what's your interaction with the portfolio and when you're in managing portfolio mode. But since we're at LSI, let's talk about how do you get in front of them. And the way I want to phrase that is, have you taken any meetings? And if you have, who are you excited to talk to and why? What's the criteria that made you excited to talk to that specific person? Armen, we're making eye contact. Why don't you start?
Sure. So first of all, if you want to talk about an inappropriate application of AI, it's in these mass emails I seem to get. In 2010, it was said you needed a connection to get to an intro to a VC. And then that got better. And then along came all this AI. And now my inbox is bombarded with all these AI emails about a company. And now you just need an introduction from somebody who knows the person again. So it's gone full circle. But the types of things that excite me, yes, I have taken lots of meetings. Yes, we just made 2 investments in July and August. And I say that, as you asked the question, there is no magic thing that is required. I like being shown what I like rather than my saying there is a specific thing and I won't consider anything else. For example, we just invested in something in precision medicine in cancer, which normally I think is a very fraught space with regulatory concerns and all kinds of competitors in it. But this particular company really showed me what was missing, both from entrepreneurs, from physicians, clinical data, and so forth. And I loved it. So I think that, if you have something that you believe is truly unique, be sure that you emphasize those points. And you can get a meeting. But make sure it's concise, make sure it's to the point, and realize that our inboxes are indeed inundated.
Susana, what about you? What's the criteria you look at?
Yeah. Let's see. I would say, to be concise, it's really relevant for me as well. So I would probably echo that point. It's relatively easy to get a meeting with me, Etienne, believe it or not. So just an email, I often reply to emails, LinkedIn messages, whatever. Very often I don't leave unanswered messages. I think it does help to get to know the Gilde investment strategy, our portfolio, our way of thinking, getting to know us a little bit better, and then hitting those points. I just said when I first answered the first question, better care at lower costs. Just tell me why your product is better care and delivers lower cost, and you probably get a meeting relatively easy. So that's probably very high level how to get a meeting.
Sean, what about you?
Yeah, so I'll have some meetings after today. The first few days have been all about me, and the company that I'm trying to run and support and fund. But for me, if I'm just putting myself out there, it's not easy. It's a grind. You have to put yourself out there. We're selling an idea in exchange for some capital to build the company. And for a lot of people, that's not the most comfortable thing to do, is to put yourself out there. And but to get those meetings, make a good first impression, do your diligence, do your research. If I was pitching to anybody here, I would want to look at their backgrounds, go on LinkedIn, see what they did, where the connections are, what they studied in school, try to make some connections so that when I get to the opportunity to have an interaction, I have something that I can relate to, maybe what they're passionate about, and then just be a really, really good listener. So for me, if I'm going to take a meeting, I want sort of the same thing. I want somebody to know what I like and what I like to invest in, what the fund's thesis is, what other investments that are already in their portfolio. You do all that research, because really you have one shot, unless you have something that is, a new value milestone that you've achieved, such as getting an IDE approval, or maybe you got some first in human data or something like that, where you can kind of go back. So I would say do your homework, do a lot of diligence, be kind, considerate, ask them what they're focused on, where do they see their portfolio, where they see their fund going. And even if you get a no, you still get a lot of feedback and a lot of data, because that's really, really important too. Where have I missed the mark? What would I need to do in order to make this more interesting to you? And if you do that, I feel like a lot of folks will be helpful and say, well, it's not good for us, but you should talk to this other fund, or you should make a good connection, because that all, I think, globally just is really helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, what you're describing really is 101 relationship building. It sounds like it's easy to get focused on what we're trying to offer, but you're talking about knowing the other person. And I'm curious if there are any patterns or things that you've seen that, wow, they really just don't understand what I'm trying to accomplish here. Are there any piece of advice or things that you've seen from that perspective that can be helpful?
Yeah, I think just sort of what I just said in terms of asking for more rationale as to why they might have passed. Try to get some more perspective, because you learn so much. Hey, I'm a little worried about your healthcare economics journey and your plans, or I'm not convinced that this could be easily adopted. And how do you, that helps you for the next pitch, right? Because you can sort of inoculate yourself against those questions by being more prepared and upfront and hitting those earlier, so that they're not asked at the end. They're sort of, the weight of the world is sort of like, okay, let's get to this part, and then it's a big dud. So I think just getting feedback is really, really important, even if it's a no.
Take a look at our portfolio. All three of us, they're on our websites, right? So if what you're doing is incredibly not in thesis for us, we're probably not the right fit, right? No.
Do you know? So you likely know other investors as well who could be. So I'll leave it at that. But Susana, what were your thoughts? Did you have any?
No, that's right. Yeah, often we syndicate rounds, right? So we often work with the same folks over and over again. So yeah, what's a better fit for me might not be a good fit for you. So we definitely have some suggestions. If a company, Gilde is a little bit more towards the late stage or later stage, I should say. So we often know a lot of funds that come in before us. And that's awesome validation from what you guys are trying to achieve. I will emphasize, though, that it's really relationship based, and we often see companies and CEOs multiple times throughout the years before we actually get to invest. So it's all about that building up of the relationship. And I will say that it's often more difficult to get a second meeting than a first one. And I know it might sound a little bit odd, and that's why it's so important to really knock it out on that first meeting, and making sure that the message stays consistent, because that's something that that stays on our mind, gets stuck on our mind in terms of execution and that capability to deliver on what you have just mentioned the year before or 2 years ago. So that's probably something that I pay a lot of attention to. Just something for you guys to be aware of.
So you talk about that first impression. People always say first impressions are important, but I kind of disagree that they're the most important. I think the last impression is the most important impression you can make. But another question I wanted to ask was, you've made several investments. If you look back, who's your favorite, whether it's company or CEO that you invested in? Is there a favorite? And what I'm really curious about are any indications or indicators as to why they were your favorite.
We don't have ugly babies at the end. Like,
I don't believe it.
No, we don't. So really, I don't know about you, but what I truly appreciate on our CEOs is the visionary mindset, coped with the relentless capability to execute and deliver, right? So the work ethics and all of that. So to me, it's that, and I think that's something that we pay attention during due diligence. So hopefully we won't get surprised once they become portfolio companies. We do due diligence on the team, right? So I would say that that's probably the trait that I appreciate most. And so I don't have a favorite per se. I'm mostly involved with 3 companies, and believe it or not, it's 3 very different CEOs. It's also 3 very different company stages. So to some extent that's expected. And I really like all of them.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe I should ask the kind of relationship you want to have going forward, because that kind of indicates how you want to start a relationship. And Sean, I wanted to ask both of you the question as far as favorite CEOs, favorite companies that you invested in, any indicators. But I also want to say, if you have a question, anybody out there, feel free to shout it out, because I know somebody's got a question on their mind. But Sean, what about you with the indicators?
My favorite CEO is me.
Yeah.
I will outwork pretty much anybody. I mean, because I was dreaming about dialysis last night, because I'm pitching my company right after this. As you know, I'm running to the next meeting, and I'm even subconsciously I'm thinking about stuff. I just came across a computational fluid dynamics study that the company did previously, which I thought was really illuminating. I'm like, how did I not even know about this? Because I took over this entity and have restructured it and brought the team down. But just like Susana said, the same thing is the grit and determination of the CEO. He or she, is driven, professional, holds their timelines, but also communicates really well. And, I've learned the hard way, your board and your investors should be your partners. And that should be part of the, what you think about when you're getting investment too. Sometimes beggars can't be choosers, right? You need capital, but sometimes you'll regret taking capital from somebody because they're not a great partner. But the CEO's role is to deliver information, good or bad, and be very transparent. What's keeping you awake at night? What are you concerned about? And hopefully you can use your partners, and they're not judging you for asking questions that you're uncomfortable by, but they're looking at it and saying, hey, okay, I have a resource, or I have a reimbursement person, or maybe we should think about this, or having a conversation with the right investors. They'll open up your world to all kinds of, extensions that could be really, really helpful. So I would say the best CEO is somebody who uses their resources, who's open and transparent and confident to know that they can't have an answer for every single thing. And that's why you have really good partners to help you through your journey.
For us, the favorite companies we have aren't the favorite ones because of the technology. I would even say that while the financial outcomes that are the best ones are fantastic, they're not even the best because of the financial outcomes. They're because the CEO is somebody who combines a relentless focus on the customer and their needs and their pain points in their day in subtle ways that no one else can possibly know, with a self-awareness of who they need on their team, their personal strengths and weaknesses, and their ability to cultivate feedback to make themselves in a state of continuous improvement.
He's a very calming voice. He'd be like a great person to have on your board. I feel like at peace.
Since you're into AI, I hope you reproduce your voice so others can use it as well.
Well, thank you. No one's ever said that before, ever.
I think we all agree, though. His voice is nice and calming.
Etienne, I would like to emphasize something that Armen just said. I think good CEOs, they obsess about the problem. I think that's a commonality, a pattern I can definitely extract from the people that outperform expectations. And that's so aligned with the way Gilde also does their own investments. We obsess about the problem, the unmet clinical need. And that's why we have one flagship fund that focuses on the unmet clinical need rather than the technology. And we do biotech and medtech. Just that one point, which I haven't mentioned, but I definitely think it's a really good one.
I think that's a really good point to bring out. So I didn't introduce myself. So I'm the host of the Global Medical Device Podcast and have had the opportunity to interview hundreds of medtech professionals over the last 5 years, however many. And one stands out. His name's Howard Root. If those of you CEOs in the audience, if you haven't read his book, Cardiac Arrest, 5 years as a CEO on the Fed's hit list, he went through 5 years fighting the FDA, 100 lawyers, and eventually sold his company for over $1.2 billion, I think it was. And that was one of the best interviews I've ever experienced besides today. And he actually talked about how in his company, in his book, he was focusing on one problem and it completely went sideways. He no longer had that problem, but that product, but the company still went on because he was able to solve the problem in a different way, different doctor, different everything. And that was impressive to me. And I think you probably all have examples like that, I'm sure, in your portfolio or past. So maybe let me flip the question. Well, instead of talking about our favorite, what ticks you off? What really drives you crazy? And that is not something, or a red flag. Let's be polite about it, I guess.
Yeah.
The red flags, both in the beginning and as you move through the relationship. Susana, you want to start?
Sure. How to be the most popular person in the room right now. Okay. The things that cool me off on a first meeting, let's see, focusing, maybe over focusing on the technology side of things. So I don't like to get the sense that the pitch turns around is a technology pull side of thing as opposed to a unmet clinical need push. So that's probably one thing. The second thing that really turns me off is if I have a sense that this CEO, we call it Louis XIV style. It's like it's I instead of we, instead of empowering the team and believing that, or giving credit to the team, to some of the company's progress and achievements. So those are the two first things that come to mind on, and that I definitely pay attention to. Yeah.
Can't tell you how much I agree with that second point 1,000 times over. It deserves repeating. If you can't give credit to your team, then you can't scale as a CEO. If I'm saying somebody on your team did a nice job, you did a nice job, right? I think for us, and this should go without saying, but I think it needs to be said, lack of integrity is an immediate turnoff. If something you're giving me is patently false, we're done. Game over. I think the thing after that, though, that I would say is, there's a saying, give people what you think they need, but also give them what they asked for. So if I'm taking a pitch and I asked a question and you're not directly answering it and making sure I feel like it's answered, then and you gave me another answer about what you really want me to know, I feel like you're trying to sell me something that's not quite exactly what I'm looking to see. So be sure that you're answering the question clearly. Something I'd say.
Sean, what about you?
Yeah, I would say more than 20 slides. You can get lost. You're like, oh my God, I read through this whole thing. So just being precise. I think touching on the important things, or just getting really, really into the weeds. It's really, really difficult to hold my attention. At least maybe I'm just too much ADHD, and I've also learned the hard way as an operator. I've gone through this many, many times. I've seen both sides of the table as an investor and as an operator. So that really tends to help because I'm like, I don't even like what I'm saying to myself. So, how's anybody else going to like it? So it really helps you, I think, to make that really condensed. But I would say, yeah, just two, or the surprise slide that says, and again, learn the hard way. It's a platform technology and it does this and this and this. Because then I start thinking, well, I've gone down this road too, right? Do I really have focus on what I'm doing? Because you need absolute focus to nail your clinical endpoint and what you're trying to achieve. Once you do that, then the platform opportunities really start to open. But if you start to incorporate that into the deck too early, then you sort of feel like the person's not really going to be focused to get over the finish line.
Can I add to that, actually? So I really encourage my entrepreneurs, after we've written them and wired them a check, to say, okay, great. Now write the pitch for your next round. Wait, why do you want me to do that? Because it's starting with what you want to be able to say when you get there. And then everything you need to do, you just wind backward from that, right? And I also encourage them to develop a list of questions that investors might ask, and to write them down in long form, not on a slide, and to ask the people, your direct reports, especially on your team, to do the same and to contribute to that list, because it does several things. One, it gets your executive team thinking about the business itself and where the challenges might be, and for them to think ahead to how they should be answered. It gives them a window into your job as CEO on fundraising. And it helps you anticipate the pitfalls along the way. So I think that's a really useful exercise that will, in the long run, make your job easier.
Like that's a great point. I know it's not really on the investor's mind, but involving the team, I think, is really important, because otherwise you're siloed. Just a quick story. We did a study in Paraguay where we used our technology, and I had all my engineers, my clinical, my regulatory, even my finance guy go down there, because I want my finance person to understand where the dollars are going. And he built some empathy for how challenging it is to not only build a medical device, but you're also building a unique, nuanced procedure for the device that you're bringing into the clinical world. So seeing the workflow, seeing how that works, and having everybody sort of feel it together. And then there's the camaraderie that you're building in those events too. And it really builds a lot of empathy and understanding. And I always tell my service providers or my employees to preach the gospel about what you're doing, because, relationships are important, and they may find somebody that might want to invest. My last company, my IP firm, made an introduction to an investor that led my B round. And I told them, I said, hey, you're my partner. I'm spending lots of money with you. I was joking last night that if I die, I want to be reincarnated as an IP attorney, because I pay them $1,000 an hour, $1,200 an hour. So, but I get everybody talking about it, because you never know where that investor, might be. And if they're talking about it, they're passionate about it. And it just builds empathy and understanding across the organization.
At LSI Dana Point, I got to interview a few family office as well as growth capital, and they looked at companies a little bit differently than I'd ever seen them before. So I'm curious your take on this. They looked at it as, okay, so I'm going to look at this company, and I want a 5-year investment to have a 10x reward or 10x return. But most of the time, he said, from the family office guy, I'm looking for a 2 to 3 year turnaround and 2 to 3x so that I can quickly invest that money in something else. And I don't say it about the numbers or the duration, but he looked at it purely as the company is the product. And so I'm curious what is on your mind when you look at these companies, look at these CEOs. Obviously, the product has to have viability, but what do you look at across these different companies as features of the company that you're curious about or interested in? This company needs to have XYZ. Whether, I'm sure, Armen, you're interested in their use of AI to enhance the processes within the company, or something else that you've seen. I'm sure, Sean, having run several companies, you want a certain culture, you want a certain flow of activity. Susana, you work with a lot of different companies on the board. What are your thoughts as far as things you're really interested in and seeing that company possess?
It's a really broad question, right? And it's not very specific. Look, we do portfolio construction, sure, right? So at Gilde, at least out of the current fund, we will try to do maybe 20 investments. So my answer to that question will change depending on which company, which space are we really talking about. I will just say that we already spoke about some of the features we are looking for here, so I will avoid repeating some of those. We, of course, underwrite a certain multiple and a certain time frame for an exit. Often doesn't go quite that way, but it's on the investment case, and we do have an investment strategy that we try to follow, right? And that we have preached our LPs with. So in our case, it changes a lot. Well, of course, we have the North Star, but it changes whether it's biotech, medtech. It changes depending on the stage of the fund we are at. Right now, we are kind of like midway. It's our fund 6 is a vintage from 2023. We have done 9 investments, so we try to do 20, so we are halfway kind of there. So we're probably not underwriting the same things as we were 2 years ago when we started deploying this fund. And certainly we are not underwriting the same things we will be in 1 year from now, when we will be hopefully trying to fill like what's the last 4 or 5 slots on the fund. So really a very broad question, so you get a really broad answer. But yeah, happy to zoom in some aspects if you'd like to.
Okay. Sean?
A very, very top shelf, extremely robust, polished chrome quality management system. I'm just kidding.
Oh, man.
That was for Greenlight Guru. They do a really good job with that. So, but all kidding aside, obviously quality at some point in time, you can have this shiny car, and then you open up the hood and there's a clunker engine in there. I mean, you need to have all that polish. So there's so many things to be concerned about when you're running a company, a regulated company. And then the people that acquire you, if you do the right way, they're going to want to be able to see that they can integrate that quickly into their quality system, right? So I want to make sure that I plugged you, because I know you're dying over there. You're thinking about quality, I can tell.
Armen, I'd love you. Talk to us. I know he's got a pitch in 11 minutes, so.
The only good thing I keep coming back to as you ask that question is that whoever it is that's saying that, success for them is 2 or 3x, I just don't send them to us, because that's not a success for us. Right? We really want to look at a company and say, if this company is successful, how is the world different? How are we being treated as patients differently? How do we avoid becoming patients? How do we take care of ourselves better? And one of these things has to be substantially different. So we look at a company and we say, if what they tell us is true, how will things be different? So for example, if you're telling me that, if I have an example of Instagram, let's use an out-of-industry example, made us all professional advertisers, then your diagnostic technology with AI makes us all professional diagnosticians, and how it would do that. And who is my buyer for that? How do we treat patients much more differently? That is what I look at as big.
Okay.
And a 10x.
And a 10, 40.
40.
So there we go.
Any questions from the audience? We have 4 minutes and 46 seconds before Sean is going to hit the door. Nothing? 3 investors? Yeah.
We're doing a Series A about it, and obviously I talk to new investors, and one of the things I often come across all the kickback, if you like, to say, well, you've already raised capital, we didn't come in on that round, we're coming in later, we need a big multiply, and 40x is not unheard of. And I often say, I would just to the perspective that in the medtech space, coming in at that stage, for most exits, it's never going to be a 40x multiplier. So they're hunting the unicorn when they're really pretty hard to find. So in other words, you get rejected because there's no way you're a 40x return.
Mm-hmm.
You're a 5 to 10 return. So
I feel like you're talking to the wrong investors then.
I would love to hear about some of those names because we want to syndicate deals with them. Interesting. Yeah, definitely. You got to manage the investors' expectations as well. That's probably also the CEO's role, or on that case, because it's orders of magnitude apart of what we do see in medtech. Often, of course, there are outliers, and thank God there is. And we have seen really interesting and encouraging exits recently, the most of which right here in the UK with Organox. But even that one, it's a stretch to say that he was a 40x for anyone on the cap table.
Yeah, to amend what I said a little bit, just because your business isn't a 40x business doesn't mean it's not a great business. Okay. Sometimes we look at companies and we say, this is a great business, but it's just not a venture business of the return that we look for. And I think sometimes you have to consider that not every financing vehicle is the right one for your business. Why venture capital? Why is that the right one? And I think that especially technical founders or scientific founders don't always answer that question first because it's just not how they're trained.
Any other question? Yeah.
I got to that multiple.
That's a really important point, and one that we haven't mentioned thus far in the panel. What we try to do at Gilde is to speak with strategics, right? Because often exits are M&A driven, and having those relationships with strategics, understand what they want to see, the gaps on their portfolio, and how do they look at certain companies and spaces. It's probably it offers some guidance. It's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's one way of pinpointing where it's gonna land. And then of course there are comps. Every space has at least some comps. So that's probably one way of looking at it. It's
An answer from you all?
So when we try to forecast a return, I think it's a lot harder to do so for a pre-seed or seed investment where we're creating a new market, and anybody who tells me they have something more than a 2-year forecast is lying to me. But I think that we can use comps and so forth, but at the end of the day, for me, a really good investment is a business that can make a lot of money. So, I just want to really look at size of potential markets and realistic chance of how they can get there. I think when we get to starting around the Series B, that's when we get out our pencils a little bit more, right? And we can look at, IPO comparables in the space. We can say, well, if conservatively these facts are true, then what? The realistic chance of their being able to implement a sales forecast and so forth and so on. That's where it gets a little bit more quantitative in our analysis.
I hope it's been a helpful panel. If you guys want to talk more, I hope this is something of an introduction to these investors. I'm going to let Sean go do his pitch here in just a moment. If you're interested in learning more about that shiny EQMS, feel free to hit us up at our booth at Greenlight Guru. But otherwise, I hope it's been helpful and continue the conversation. Thank you all.
Thank you.
everyone.